Bapak Ibu, mohon maaf, kita akan mulai di jam 10 lewat 5 menit sambil menunggu peserta yang masih terus masuk. Terima kasih. Mas Adam, silakan.
Oke, terima kasih. Apakah sebelumnya suara saya terdengar?
Yep.
Oke. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Zoom seminar. My name is Adam Sakti, and I'm honored to be your moderator today, representing from Mulawarman University. First of all, thank you for taking your time to be here, and we're also excited to have two insightful speakers joining in our room for today. And we hope for today's session, we will spark some meaningful ideas and reflection. Before we begin, let me give you a quick rundown of what we'll be doing today. First, we'll have opening remarks from IMNF representative and from the behalf of the Dean of the Faculty Teacher Training and Education, which will going to be done by Miss Yuni Utamiasih. Then we'll take a group photo. After that, we're going to delve into our main agenda of presentations. In the first presentation, we'll have Dr. Maria Tamarina Prawati from BINUS University. And then for the second presentation will be delivered by Dr. Noor Rachmawaty from Mulawarman University. And finally, we'll close with a Q&A session where the audience can interact directly with our speakers. First of all, let's begin with our opening remarks. For the first remark, we have a representative from MNF, Ms. Miftahul Mardiah. Ms. Miftahul Mardiah is the Communications Officer at the American Indonesian Exchange Foundation, or MNF, the Fulbright Commission in Indonesia. Let us first welcome Ms. Miftahul Mardiah to give her remarks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adam, for the very warm welcome. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the introduction. And as mentioned earlier, I am Miftahul Mardia from Aminef. Shortly, you can call me Mita. I'm very pleased to convey warm greetings from us in Jakarta to the participants who joined this Fulbright research presentation, a program supported by Aminef and run by Fulbright scholars to share their research findings with the public. This activity is a part of our commitment to support academic collaboration and promote impactful research. And we are very honored because this morning there will be two Fulbrighters as speakers at this Fulbright research presentation entitled Exploring English Language and Culture Teaching Across Contexts. And they are Dr. Tamarina Prawati from BINUS University. She is awarded the Fulbright Visiting Scholar in 2024 at Virginia Tech. And the second speaker, who is also a Fulbrighter, Dr. Noor Rachmawaty. She was awarded the Fulbright FLTA in 2006, where she taught Indonesian at Stanford University. She is currently the head of language unit at Mulawarman University. We also want to thank Universitas Mulawarman and BINUS University as well for this meaningful and wonderful collaboration. We do hope that today's session will be useful for all of us and also inspiring. Thank you, and over to you, Mr. Adam. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for Ms. Mita for the amazing remarks. For the second remarks will be delivered on behalf of the Dean of the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Mulawarman University. But today, unfortunately, the Dean, Professor Dr. Susilo Ma'ruf MPD, is unable to join us because of his duty to be one of the speakers in another occasion. and he is represented by Dr. Yuni Utami Asih, SPD MPD, who is the head of the English Education Study Program. Now, let us welcome Dr. Yuni Utami Asih to deliver the remarks.
Thank you, Adam. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to this event, exploring English language and culture teaching across context. It's truly a pleasure for me to see students and also educators and the enthusiasts gathered here today. And on behalf of the Dean of the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education of Mulawarman University, I extend our sincerest gratitude to Fulbright Indonesia for hosting this precious sharing event with Dr. Tamarina Prawati and Dr. Noor Rachmawaty. Soon we'll have an exciting discussion to delve into the multi-faced nature of English language and culture teaching, and also examining various approaches, challenges, and innovations across different educational and cultural settings. I believe that our speakers and all of the participants will explore also how English is taught and learned, and how cultural understanding is intertwined with linguistic proficiency. We hope that by the end of the sharing, everybody will leave feeling inspired, enriched, and equipped with new strategies and broader understanding of the incredible work. Thank you again for being here, and let's embark this enriching exploration together. Have a nice discussion, everyone. Professor Susilo as the Dean, once again apologize for not being able to join this event directly. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Yuni Utami Asih for delivering the remarks. Now, before we move to our main session, first we have to take a group photo for everyone. So I would like to invite everyone in the group, in the room chat, to open your camera and smile for the cameras. So I would like to taking the picture for today, uno momento. So please look at the camera and smile in 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, let's check another one. 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, another one. 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, thank you, everyone. So let's move out to our main agenda. Now it's time for our first presentation. The first presentation will be presented by Dr. Tamarina Prawati. And for the record, Dr. Tamarina Prawati was awarded the Fulbright Visiting Scholar Fellowship in 2024 at Virginia Tech in America. She is also one of the lecturers at BINUS University. So in this presentation, Dr. Tamarina Prawati will present her topics entitled English Language and Culture Teaching Paradigms in the Indonesian and United States Context, a case study. For Dr. Maria, the screen is yours.
Okay, voice is better right now. All right. Yeah, Bapak Ibu, thank you so much for having me this morning. And basically, I'd like to also express my gratitude to Universitas Mulawarman for this mutual collaboration. So we've been going through like 2 webinars, and hopefully we can extend to another collaboration as well. And of course, I'd like to thank you. I mean, I'd like to express my gratitude as well to Bu Yuni and then um, Bu Maria Theodora Ping, who actually has the same initial with me. So we keep on exchanging our document when we're about to go to United States. But anyway, of course, thank you to Mbak Mita and the whole IMINF team for supporting this event and also for the whole experience that we've been going through with IMINF and Fulbright. Yes, this morning I'm going to share just a bit of my experience, and this is actually the experience that I've been going through since working on my dissertation as well. So when I work on this research, it was started from my dissertation and my interest as cross-cultural understanding lecturer starting from 2010. So it was based on my curiosity at that time because the more I teach my students, the more I'm aware that my students come from different backgrounds. And of course, they're actually here in Jakarta, but when I try to talk to them a bit deeper, they uh, have different perceptions of English language and culture, and it comes from from different experience they have starting from their family and then elementary school going on to junior high school and high school. Then finally they come to undergraduate. And based on that curiosity, I decided to go through a research on English language and culture pedagogical paradigm. So the paradigm it's based on different stream, which I'm going to share later, and then after gathering the data within the Jakarta context, which is more on EFL context. So the teachers are EFL English. They are EFL speakers, and then the students are also EFL speakers. I wish to extend this to different contexts where the teachers are in their first English as their first language, and then their students are into English as their foreign language. So different. Of course, they will have different perspective of English language and culture. And then I presented this work already when I was in the US, of course, with my affiliated institution. And going through this research, I went through like 3 months ethical review first before finally I can interact with the students for data gathering and also with the lecturers for data gathering. But overall, this is what I'm going to share. So the background of the study, and then the research question, theoretical overview, research method, and then how's the result, discussion, conclusion. Then later, after we have everybody's presentation, we can have the Q&A. But again, Bapak Ibu, I'm still nervous to be honest because I know you are all even more expert than me. So what I'm going to share to you is based on the experience that I've been going through starting from Jakarta, and then finally I can get a chance to gather the data in the US in a specific context of English as a preparation class before the students departing to university level. So as I mentioned, this study was initiated in 2020 in the EFL context, in English as foreign language context. And I know Jakarta has some kind of cosmopolitan backdrops. And this place where I'm sitting right now is the hub of international and international transaction. And English can be used for interactional tool in classroom, but some of them, they also use it as their main language as they go to department store, for example, to their family. So my students here, or students here in Jakarta, they have different backgrounds and different use of English. And then at that time, when I started this study, I taught cross-cultural understanding and then found the materials were deterministic and full of definitions. So, for example, cross-cultural understanding is, and then, for example, American culture is, or when we go to certain geographical area, this is the culture or this is the language they use. And when we interact with certain group of people, this is what you have to do. And everything is basically divine. And then you, as a students, they really have to memorize them. And in the end of the class, we do some kind of assessment, which is more on like multiple choice and then yes or no questions, or I mean, open questions, and then thinking yes or no, and then well, those kind of typical definitive questions. And then the main target of the lesson is to achieve intercultural communicative competence. So on my second year, no, on my third year teaching this course, and then after interacting with the students one by one, I start being aware that even in the southern part of Jakarta, the Gen Z speaks to each other in English outside of the classroom, and they have their own identity and background that they bring along when they communicate with their friends outside of classroom and also within the classroom. When I presented this in the US, I showed my PI, my primary investigator, so basically my supervisor, that this is how um, Indonesian speaks in English. So maybe I'm going to play this a little bit, but not going to. I'm not going to play the whole set of the video.
And also German literature. So you're fluent in German, huh?
So, funny story. When I was a little girl, I actually spoke better German than English because I was living in Germany.
Yeah.
And so, when I moved from Germany to Indonesia, I actually struggled in school because I didn't speak English very fluently at the time.
When did you move
But
here?
then, when I was like 11.
Okay.
But then, what's funny was, obviously, like most teenagers, I wanted to fit in. So I started speaking English, and my dad was like, you know what, we're going to speak English at home.
Okay, so that was one of the example that I gave to my PI, and then she's a bit surprised with how different identity or background that
Home because I
we bring along. Just a minute, Bapak Ibu. So I'm going to stop this. Okay, so sorry for the hiccup. But yeah, so based on this video, finally we come to conclusion that um, English is now less tied to a place, territory, or cultural identity, and it's basically it belongs to everybody. And this is actually the famous quote from Otsuji and Panikook. I believe all of you are familiar with Panikook, and he's been discussing a lot of English is being less tied to a place, territory, and identity can be in a form of backpack that we can put down and put on, or even we can carry different backpack at the same time. Like for example, when we saw the video, everybody knows Cinta Laura, and then everybody knows there are area in Jakarta where people speak in English all the time, and they speak only a little of Bahasa Indonesia. And some of my students at that time, not maybe it's less than it was less than 5 people, but our students at that time, my students at that time, they might need to deal with a more personalized English language and culture, because basically with this kind of hybridity of identity, defining English language and culture should be presented in different way instead of something definitive or something that we ask our students to memorize and recognize all the time. We might have to move forward. Move to other way of presenting English language and culture. And even if we check on literature right now, there are a lot of a lot of author or researchers saying that we got to move from essentialism to postmodernism. So essentialism is more on defining things, all right, defining English language and culture, and then trying to affiliate language and culture to certain geographical area or a group of people. And we got to move to present this as something hybrid. So aware with the situation, my previous research tried to explore the existing language and cultural pedagogical paradigm adopted by teachers in the intercultural courses. And then what are the teachers and students' opinion about the importance of teaching English culture for global English communication? So I'm trying to see how do teachers and students see English language and cultural pedagogical paradigm that they have already experienced, and then trying to find out how is their opinion about the importance of English language and culture for the purpose of global English communication. And then based on these two questions, this is the result of my study in Jakarta. The result shows that there is a trace of transnational pedagogy. Although we thought everything is essentialist, definitive, like my earlier statement, before I did the study in 2020, and then I found out after the study, although there is a sense of essentialism, defining English language and culture, defining English language and culture belongs to a certain geographical area, but it turns out there is an aspect of transnational pedagogy which is more on postmodern. So we can find topics and discourse presented in language and culture involving different origin and tones. Like, for example, Asian living in English-speaking countries, or showing that there are different groups of people who can speak English beyond the what we called before as inner circle. And then it turns out that the pedagogical paradigm existing in Jakarta at that time when I did the study, it was more on eclecticism. So yes, there is essentialism to help students recognizing different language and culture and different English language and culture. And then after that, the lecturers tend to help students to categorizing, comparing, and contrasting different English language and culture. So after asking the students to memorize what does it mean by mosaic, for example, what does it mean by melting pot, what does it mean by this and that, and then what kind of language do we use in the United States, for example, or recognizing different geographical area and their accent, for example. The lecturers move to categorizing, comparing, and contrasting. So there is an activity I remember at that time in a class in Jakarta. The students were invited to wear their national costume, and then after that, they're also invited to present the song or national anthem or whatever kind of artifact related to English language and culture. For example, the national anthem, or even flag, or even costume and emblem, or whatever things related to English language and culture. And then after that, in the end of the class, there will be a session of reflective essay or dialogical discovering and interacting English language and culture. Such as, for example, the students are invited to finally come up with their perception. So what does it mean by melting pot? What does it mean by mosaic? After they experience all of this essentialism and modernism. Well, maybe it's a bit complex in terms of theoretical framework, but I'm going to I'm going to lead you further to what does it mean by essentialism, modernism, postmodernism in English language and culture pedagogical paradigm. So if you come from literature, you might be familiar with this. Essentialism is modernism is postmodernism, and this kind of paradigm is being used usually to analyze literary work, right? But this time, I'm using this framework to analyze English language and culture pedagogical paradigm. So if you know, let me go to the paradigm first. Right. Let me go further. Okay. So I'm going to go back and forth, Bapak Ibu. So from essentialism to postmodernism, this theory synthesized language and culture pedagogical paradigm constructed by different authors. And then basically, if we talk about essentialism, okay, as I mentioned before, we tend to introduce certain language and culture based on geographical area, and it's usually bounded to certain group of people. For example, when you see Indonesian, you have to say hello. And if you don't say hello, you might not be accepted by their culture. This is an example, okay? And then when we go to modernism / structuralism, Indonesian consists of different layer of society in terms of age, for example, and then you have to interact with this different layer differently. Or in easy way, for example, in Japanese, there is a layer of language that you have to recognize before you interact with the people in Java. Because if you don't use the language properly, you might not be accepted by that certain layer. So that is what we call as structuralism. So we structure language and culture, and the same thing with English language and culture. When we structure or group English language and culture, we might, well, maybe unconsciously, we might present the language and culture based on state in the United States, for example. Or the people from Texas, they tend to have certain accent. Or people in Virginia, the place where I stayed before, maybe has certain vibes of interactions and different accent, of course. And that kind of grouping and structuring becomes very much tied within the modernism and structuralism. So that is the main characteristic of modernism and structuralism. Meanwhile, in postmodernism, we can refer to what has been mentioned by Risager. So this is what inspired my study, actually. When I read The National to Transnationalism, Risager said that English language and culture should move from national perspective, where language and culture belong to nation or states, or even being categorized as a structure, to a transnational perspective, where language and culture move beyond borders, and admitting one thing which is important, and admitting that we as a person, we might come from different background, and we might carry different backpack of identity because of globalization, because of migration, and of course because of the exchange that we've been doing. But then when I read this, I put the question back to my context as a lecturer in Jakarta. Do we really have to move to postmodernism directly? Or do we have to go through essentialism, modernism, and then postmodernism in the end? And it turns out, as I mentioned, it turns out my study shows that we got to move from essentialism to modernism and then postmodernism. I mean, it's not an absolute suggestion for everybody here, but this is the context of Indonesia where I put my study. And then this is what I found. So most of the lectures, instead of going to postmodernism, in introducing hybrid identity and then introducing English language and culture as language and culture, which is not connected to certain geographical area, the lectures tend to start from essentialism, from defining it first, introducing the basic knowledge first, and then after that, doing the comparison and contrast, comparing Indonesian identity, Indonesian language and culture with English language and culture by doing showcase of costume or artifact, like, for example, flag, national anthem, those kind of stuff. And then two, introducing different hybrid identity and hybridity of English language and culture. Because if we want to introduce Apple, this is just an analogy. If we want to introduce Apple to our students, but they haven't seen Apple at all, they might thought it's a pear. In the contrary, if we want to introduce a pear to our students, but they haven't seen and they haven't tasted the fruit itself, it's going to be hard, right? So providing the real artifact or example. Artifact here means example or a model that we can bring in the classroom. That will be a good help to go through this process. Because if you see BIRAM, the model, right, to achieve interculturalism, intercultural communicative competence, to achieve that, we got to move from knowledge, knowing what does it mean by this, what does it mean by that, so the definition, and then moving into the attitude, okay? And after that, when we do the comparison and contrasting, we're trying to relate ourselves, our identity with others, and then doing the interpreting, relating. And then after that, the students hopefully will discover and will start the interaction to finally achieve the critical cultural awareness. So if we put this in BIRAM model, there is no, as far as I know, but Bapak Ibu, if you have other opinion, feel free to jump in later in the question and answer session. But I've been going through like several reading and then trying to find out where is the entry point. Is it through knowledge? Is it through interpreting, relating skills? Do we have to start our classroom with discovery interaction, doing the cultural practice directly? Or do we have to focus on the attitudes of our students, or how is it? But again, based on the study in Jakarta, we got to start from knowledge first. And then after that, moving to the next step, which is shown here. So starting from knowledge, attitude, interpreting, relating, discovery, interaction, critical cultural awareness. And again, Bapak Ibu, this is based on the study of several study sites. So once again, if you want to check how is the paradigm existing in your classroom, that will be also interesting to find out. Now, what's going on in the US? Okay, so when I try to find, when we get the grants, when we want to try to apply for the grants, the first thing I did, I tried to find a study site with varieties of background and program. And I found out that the LCI, Language, Culture, and Institute in Virginia is pretty interesting because they facilitate English for academic and also English preparation program. So because I want to expand this study and I want to find out whether the context in Virginia also similar to what I found here in Jakarta, or maybe different, I start from observation. So using the same theoretical framework, and then this kind of claim, the one that I mentioned to you, so essentialism, and this is the claim. These are actually the category that I put down and transform into survey and interview questions. For example, essentialism culture is something that people naturally have, right? The essence. Then people who stay inside the closed system, language and culture tend to be static, unchangeable. To modernism, where culture is like a language that is understood as a system and structured. So structural approaches here in modernism tend to ignore the role of human subject and focus on the role of workings in cultural systems. So if there is no system, the language and culture doesn't work. That's bottom line. That's a conclusion in modernism and structuralism. Moving to postmodernism, because English language and culture is being seen as detached from geographical area or group. That's why language and culture, language especially, is rather considered a social semiotic, which is used for expressing thought. Depends on who speaks to whom, about what, under which kind of circumstances. So it's more complex, right? But mainly, if I have to conclude what is actually postmodernism here in this study, English language and culture is rather seen as a communication tools, as a communication attempt to shape a context. That's why this language and culture is portable. Okay, because communities in our era has been very hybrid and too complex to frame this into certain shape or certain geographical area, which is pretty abstract. Well, feel free to share your thoughts later. And this data, right? This data gathered throughout 15 observation notes. So I joined 15 session. I guess more than that, but I took notes like 15 observation notes, and then 63 survey participants, 7 interview students, and also I went through materials analysis. So I started from classroom observation, survey, interview, and document analysis. I started from classroom observation because to do interaction with students, we got to pass through the ethical review first, which took me 3 months to finish that. But it's pretty interesting because in the end, I have to translate the interview protocol and survey into Mandarin, Thai, and Arabic because the students come from different language just to ensure the validity. And of course, the reliability survey. And in the end, the result shows that if I can wrap up the result. So when I asked them, what is your motivation of learning English? They say they want to study. They want to study computer science. They want to have the best education because they know once they're graduated from US, they will have higher salary. And even one of the students, they started from international kindergarten. Although the parents are farmer, the parents try to do their best to put their kids in international kindergarten because once they pass through international school, it will be easier for them to go to Europe or even to United States. And what is interesting from the statement, this participant 6, from the very beginning, my parents want me to be an international person. That's the reason why English is important for the whole family. And then, there is one last participant stating that he came to US during the first grade and second grade because his father worked in the US, but then he went back to his home country for a couple of years. But then in the end, during the graduate study, the parents decided to send him back again. I heard even there is one student whose family, the whole family, moved to United States and starting from scratch. I mean, starting from zero, just to make sure that their kids to be international person. So English for them is equal to international identity or global identity. And the value of English for them is really different from one person to another person. Like, for example, one person stating that English is part of curriculum, which is English is for education, the same like their motivation of learning English. And then one person also say English is for them to communicate. English is for them to explain their cultural background, and English is for them to read book. So one is English for communication, the other one is English for school. So what happened before they come to US, the way they learn English is mainly into grammar and then writing, reading. So they receive a lot of receiving, right? So language is rather receiving instead of producing, and therefore they barely experience practices. While in the US, they do presentation and then they go out to the museum. They do a lot of traveling, experiencing Thanksgiving, for example. Like what I can show here, they keep on doing presentation almost every single week. And they also organize this gratitude feast, for example, and then every single person can express they are thankful because of this and this and this. So I took picture of every single activity and putting down every single picture as a treasure for me, to be honest, because I try to read every single writing of the students. When they say thank you, they sometimes they are thankful for the blue sky, just like what we have always in front of our classroom window. So this is a real life activity, but of course they have classes, and their classes also teach them how to write, how to read, and also listening, which is listening and speaking for sure. So from this whole experience, I posted questions. Do you think you are now an English user or speaker? Most of them, they say no, because they classify the ability or the identity of English user or speaker by CEFR. Like, for example, the first respondent here say, no, I think C2 people. C2 is the level in CFR or English speaker because they speak and think in their head in English. And then the next participant say, yeah, I think everybody who come from outside of France zone or English speakers, because basically his first language is a regional language, and then the second language is French. So then I come to the question, what does English speaker mean what does English speaker in globalized era mean for you? So even if I know English, you can travel. Even if you know only the basic English, you can travel. And then you will want to see different things. There are a lot of if I can wrap up the whole setup of the study. So I tried to figure out what do they think about English, and then what do they experience before they come to US, and then what do they experience when they're in the US, and in the end, what do they need with their English language and culture? So when I come to the intercultural practices I need this to survive in the US because they've been into American dreams, to be honest, and then they also want to be international person, as one of the participants say. So basically, they need the intercultural skill they need is to speak with others, okay, and then not only transactional conversation, but they also need to understand jokes. That's what they say, because if they don't understand the joke, they can't really immerse into the club activity or even group work or even interacting with their friends, family, for example. So in conclusion, okay, if I can wrap up everything quickly. So the first research question, what are the existing language and cultural pedagogical paradigm adapted in classroom? I can find still eclecticism because the surveys show students agree on predominantly 3 different items, belong to essentialism, structuralism, and modernism. I found that culture can be different from one person to other person, although they belong to the same country. And then English culture consists of layers, which is more on structuralism. And then I learned English language culture are not only Western culture. I learned how to use English expression appropriately based on the situation, which is more on postmodernism. And then the interview shows the same thing because they experience Thanksgiving, they have speaking practice, they have speaking buddy as well. And when I put it into a cloud, they see the interaction in classroom is more on practice a lot and centralized to students' activity. And there are a lot of interactions as well. And what is interesting, they feel like they have to think a lot, and this is what makes us laugh as teacher, because we know how do they put themselves into writing, grammar, and reading. So they feel like they have to think a lot in classroom. And when we come to the second question, what are the students' opinion about the importance of learning English culture for global English communication? Culture should be best introduced through activity, like Thanksgiving, where there is a game, and then if let's say if we have to point out which culture should be presented, they mention if it depends on where you want to stay for long term. If you want to stay in America, then you have to focus on American culture. If you want to go to other countries, maybe it would be better if you're focusing on certain country, because we don't have enough time to learn everything. That's what they say. And then the best way to learn English is to practice in English that much. So going out from classroom will be very much helping them, because even though we have a lot of activities like Thanksgiving party and everything within the classroom environment, it's not really enough for them to learn idioms, metaphors, or even jokes. As simple as that. And then they think their opinions about the importance of learning English culture for global English communication is to see the intercultural practice and their experience of using English. Then how they see themselves in the end. How they see themselves in the end. I think I need to have a special accent to be an English user. That's what they think. And then as an English speakers, if I want to be an English speakers, we gotta talk with anyone without translator, and words just come out of their mind fluently. And to be to have intercultural communicative competence, they basically need to have more conversation with the native speakers, and phones basically helping them more. And this is the skill they need. I need to listen more. I need to be friendly. I need to have inclusive mind. I need to understand other culture and embrace different culture. So this result aligned with the Byram's again diagram. And this time the entry point is not really knowledge first, but the attitude. So this is what they think they need to earn more. And basically, this is what has been shaped in classroom, along with knowledge, interpreting, relating skill, discovery, interaction skill, and critical cultural awareness. Bapak Ibu, my apology, I might pass the time, but hopefully we can have more interaction in the question and answer session. I'm going to put it back to the moderator. Thank you so much.
Okay, what an amazing presentation from Ms. Maria. We see a couple of research questions that have already been mentioned about what are the existing language, and then what are the students' opinions, and then what are the students' opinion about the importance of learning English culture itself. And we also see in the last panel or in the last slide, she mentioned about the intercultural communicative competence model, I think from Byram in 1997, about the ideal image of English speakers, the whole for Savoyers, and the intercultural skills needed. It's really amazing, amazing presentation. Now we're going to moving on to our second amazing speaker as well, from Dr. Noor Rachmawaty. And I would like to give you a short introduction about Miss Noor Rachmawaty. So Miss Noor Rachmawaty is a lecturer in the English education program at Mulawarman University and currently serves as the director of its language center. She holds a bachelor degree in English education from Mulawarman University and master's in TESOL from Monash University in 2005 and doctorate from the University of Makassar. And in this presentation, Dr. Noor Rachmawaty will present her topic entitled Unpacking the Role of Cultural Intelligence and Learning Strategies in Enhancing EFL Learners' English Proficiency. For Dr. Noor Rachmawaty, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Adam. Am I audible? So,
Yes, miss.
firstly, thank you. Firstly, I would like to extend my greatest gratitude to MNEF, Fulbright Indonesia, BINUS University, and Mulawarman University for being able to join this event. I'm very honored. I'm going to share my PowerPoint and I think I'd like to relate a little bit on what Maria has mentioned in her presentation. She's talking about culture and comparing it between how the Indonesian students and how concept of culture perceived in America. And her study mainly focusing on qualitative design. And now my study will take you to a more quantitative design. And we are still talking about culture, but we are talking about culture and other related variables that might influence the culture itself. So this is, I think this was my first study related to cultural intelligence, and this study is also part of my dissertation in back in 2018. Okay, so I'm going to start with the quote from a bit Abhijit Naskar, he mentioned that language is the highway to culture. And I think from this quote, we can get the idea that when we would like to understand culture, we need to be able to understand the language, and also vice versa. And what happened to the study that I did? This was starting with the phenomena that I found that EFL learners, particularly in the context of EFL learners in East Kalimantan, they face challenges in English proficiency due to linguistic complexities and cultural barriers. And it is assumed that it is necessary for the students to understand about or to be aware of culture, that it might help them to adapt and navigate in diverse cultural contexts. And I think this part is closely related to what Ibu Maria found in her study, that cultural intelligence in the form of intercultural competence are very important for the students when they are in different cultural contexts. Since this study is not only talking about culture, and this study is looking at how culture might be related to other variables. One of it is the learning strategies. Learning strategies is found to complement cultural intelligence by providing effective language acquisition method, because when a student learn a language, they tend to implement certain strategies in order to acquire the foreign language. Previous studies mentioned that cultural intelligence, or CQ, as a predictor of cultural adjustment and language skills. And another study by Oxford also mentioned that how well developed learning strategies enhance the language outcomes. So the better foreign language students apply language learning strategies, means that they may develop better language proficiency. So integrating cultural intelligence and learning strategies might improve the EFL learning proficiency and intercultural communication skills. So as I mentioned before, that this is the phenomena that many EFL learners struggle achieving adequate English proficiencies despite of their language effort, and they have limited understanding of the impact of cultural intelligence on their English language learning outcomes. Yes, in English department, for example, students also learn about culture in certain courses. For example, in cross-cultural understanding course, so they are also exposed by information and activities by the lecturer regarding different culture from different cultural background. But perhaps they still have the limited understanding of why is it necessary for them to learn the culture of the target language, because they might not see the the immediate needs of understanding the foreign language culture while they are learning a foreign language. So in addition, there is lack of clarity on how learning strategies interact with cultural intelligence to influence the learner's proficiency. So there are insufficient research focusing on gender differences in cultural intelligence, learning strategies, and English proficiencies, proficiency in the FL context. And there is a research gap in exploring the combined role of CQ learning strategies to enhance English proficiency effectively. So this is actually a small-scale research that I did in 2018, looking at the correlation between cultural intelligence, language learning strategies, and English proficiency of the EFL students. So in this study, there are three aims. The first one is to look at the level of cultural intelligence, language learning strategies, and the English proficiency among the students. The second one is to examine whether there are gender differences in cultural intelligence level, language learning strategy use, and English proficiency. And the third is to investigate the relationship between cultural intelligence, language learning strategies, and English proficiency. So I'm going to just read out the literature review that I use in the study. So I'm using the concept of cultural intelligence from Ang, Early and Ang. And also I'm using the theory of language learning strategy by Oxford. And I'm looking at the synergy of cultural intelligence and strategies by Thomas et al. So previous research mentioned that there is gender differences that may exist in cultural intelligence and learning strategies, and that may influence a language learning result. That was reported by Ang in 2007, and but there is a still gap mentioning about how the combined variables related to English proficiency, particularly across diverse learning profiles. So this study is a correlational study, and it involved the 5th semester English department students. We are inviting around 120 students, but only 87 students were willingly participated in this study. And to assess the cultural intelligence, I used the cultural intelligence questionnaire, and for the language learning strategies, I used the SIL questionnaire, and to measure the English proficiency, I used the TOEFL prediction test that can be that was I think we got it from available books in the bookstore. Okay, so here are the results of the study. So with regards to the level of cultural intelligence, the students are in the medium level, and then only, I think, 16% were in high and 9% in the low level. While for the strategy use, most students use strategy in a medium level, meaning that they're using it, that frequency in using the language strategy is not just in an average, yeah, not that high or not that low. And the level of the proficiency of the students are ranging from elementary to advanced level, and the most dominant level is the low intermediate, with almost half of the total sample. categorized in the low intermediate. Next is the intercultural level or intercultural score of the students. Yeah, based on gender, the most dominant factors that influence the level of cultural intelligence, the metacognitive factor and motivational factor and behavioral factor, following the first factor. And the least was the cognitive factor. Both male and female students influenced by the metacognitive factors. And metacognitive factor is the individual cultural consciousness and awareness during the interaction with people who have different cultural background. So these are the factors that influence the total score of the cultural intelligence factor. Talking about the overall use of language learning strategies, in SEAL, we have 6 types of language learning strategies, and it can be seen from this table that the most frequently used strategy is the metacognitive strategy, and the least one is the affective strategy. With regards to gender, both male and female students use metacognitive strategies as the most frequently used strategies and affective strategy as the least frequently used. So when we are looking at the gender difference, there is no difference between male and female in the use when they use or when they apply the language learning strategies. Now, when we are looking at the correlation between cultural intelligence and language learning strategies, it shows that there is a meaningful relationship between cultural intelligence and language learning strategies. Meanwhile, there is no correlation when we relate or when we correlate the 3 variables. It was found that there is no correlation among cultural intelligence, language learning strategies, and English proficiencies. And when we are looking at a more detailed part, when we're looking at the cultural intelligence and language learning use, metacognitive metacognitive factor influences both frequent and less frequent use of language learning strategies. So when we're looking at the cultural intelligence and language learning strategies are correlated, but which one of the factors of the cultural intelligence that influence the language learning strategies, and it was found that the metacognitive factor influences the both frequent and less frequent use of language learning strategies. And when we are looking at cultural intelligence and language proficiencies, it is shown that the high proficiency student reported have higher mean score in CQ compared to the low proficiency students. And the high proficiency students are influenced by the metacognitive and cognitive factors, while the least proficient students directed by the motivational and behavioral factors. When we are looking at the language learning strategies and English proficiency of the students, it is shown that the high proficiency students have relatively higher mean score in all of the 6 strategies than the low proficiency students. Yeah. So proficient students use almost all types of the learning strategies compared to the low proficient students. Yeah. And the most preferred strategies for the high proficiency students are metacognitive strategies and compensation strategies. While for the low proficient students, they use the metacognitive strategies and cognitive strategies. So what can we learn, or what are the key findings in this study? So this study reveals that the medium level of cultural intelligence among the students with metacognitive and motivational factors as the dominant components. And the metacognitive factors is critical because it encourages active and critical thinking about cultural differences, and it promotes evaluation and revision of mental maps, leading to a better understanding. And this metacognitive cultural intelligence enhances cultural awareness, which helps students to select and use language learning strategies more effectively. And the influence of culture shapes the frequency and types of strategies used in learning English. And when we are looking at the factors in cultural intelligence, the motivational factor of cultural intelligence contributes significantly to students' overall CQ level, and it directs attention and energy toward cultural differences. So I think motivational factor help the students to have higher cultural awareness when they are learning the foreign language or being in a different setting. And motivational cultural intelligence enhances self-efficacy and intrinsic motivation in selecting and using language learning strategies for the FLTA. Cultivating a culturally responsive teaching environment is essential to foster student CQ through cross-cultural interaction. And high cultural intelligence encourage better understanding of own and foreign cultures, helping students to become effective language learners who use strategies aligned to their personality and background. So with regards to correlation, this study found no correlation among CQ learning strategies and English proficiency, even though CQ and learning strategies were significantly correlated. And this actually contrasts with the previous study, who found that negative but significant correlation between CQ and English proficiency, possibly due to context, individual differences, and participant majors. Other studies found that CQ did not predict language proficiency in the STEM English program. And I think this is might consistent with the current findings. When we are talking about the students in different proficiency level, so the high proficiency students showed higher scores in metacognitive and cognitive CQ factors, while low proficiency students had higher motivational and behavioral CQ factor. And high proficiency students use more diverse and frequent language learning strategies, except the effective strategies, compared to low proficiency students, and this supported by previous studies conducted by Abraham, Fan, O'Malley, and Cameron. Okay, so to conclude, motivational intelligence influences language engagement, and there is no direct correlation found between cultural intelligence, language learning strategies, and English proficiencies, and different factors of cultural intelligence affect learners differently, based on their proficiency level. So what can I recommend from the result of this study? So the first one, I think it is necessary to foster culturally responsive learning environment and tailor teaching strategies to learners' proficiencies and CQ provides. And the last one is to encourage diverse and frequent use of language learning strategies. So thank you very much. I give back to the moderator.
What an amazing presentation from Ms. Noor Rachmawaty, and she mentioned about EFL learners who challenges in English proficiency due to linguistic and cultural barriers, if I'm not mistaken, and also mentioning about cultural intelligence or CQ, how learners adapt and navigate diverse cultural contexts. And we see a lot of problems as well, how they struggle with achieving adequate English and how lack of clarity on how learning strategies insufficient research, and etc. And we see the results as well presented. And in the summary and conclusion, we see that CQ influence language learning engagement and no direct link between CQ learning strategies and English proficiency. And last one is different CQ factors affect learners differently based on proficiency level. Okay. What an amazing presentation from our two speakers. And I think the audience in the room probably has a lot of questions to ask. Now, I think we will open the Q&A session. And if you'd like to ask, you can type it in the chat box or use the raise hand feature. So I would like to open the Q&A session from now. Okay, we have Mr. Shahid. For Mr. Shahid, the time is yours.
Thank you, moderator, Mr. Adam Bima Sakti. Do you hear my voice? Okay, thank you. So I listened to the presentation from Ibu Maria about the cross-cultural understanding. It's insightful, very interesting, especially when you conducted your research dealing with the English related to the language of Mandarin, English, and Arabic in Jakarta, right? Okay, so my question is dealing with the transnational pedagogy, because so far when I read research dealing with pedagogy, then it deals only about the idea of teaching English for elementary, junior, and senior high school students. When it comes to cross-cultural understanding, I teach the subject CCU in the university level. And it comes to the idea of andragogy, or teaching adults. So how should we put that in context to comprehend the transnational pedagogy so that it can be fit into the realms of higher education? Thank you, Ibu Maria.
Thank you, Pak Syahid. Perhaps if I can confirm, Mas Adam, should I just respond it first or?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Pak Syahid. That's very interesting questions. Maybe if I can clarify, so my students here, they belong to different mother tongue. And of course, as Indonesian, we know most of us we can speak more than two languages, right? We have our regional local language. We have our own dialect, right? And then some of us might start from the dialect, then Bahasa Indonesian and also English, right? And there was a sort of the thought that am I presenting the right English language and culture materials, or do I do it right in the cross-cultural understanding classroom? Does it have to be definitive and everything, right? Usually when I am aware that I might have to do something else, I check the ground by asking students' need. So that's what I usually do first. That's why, as part of my questionnaire and also interview survey, it's not only checking students and teacher opinion about English language and culture, and but I also check what do the students need, because whatever happened, they come to the classroom with their need. They come for a reason, right? And that's always been a good, efficient way for me to finally come to a decision, whether it has to be essentialism or eclecticism or modernism. Does it have to be national or transnational? So maybe coming up with some kind of need survey first in classroom, that would be great help. I guess that's what I can share, Pak Syahid.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Maria. So, in other words, you would like to say that we need to recognize the students first. So, in that way, we can direct the lessons and the issues. And thank you.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you for Mr. Said for the amazing question. Now we're going to move out to another audience. If you would like to ask, you can type it on the chat box or you can raise your hand. Yes, we have Miss Uni. Yes.
Assalamualaikum. Hello everybody. Hello ladies and gentlemen. Actually, I'm from Banjarmasin, South Kalimantan, and I wanna ask with Miss Maria about cross-cultural context in teaching English. As a teacher in junior high school, I find some difficult. So I want to ask about how the teacher assess the success of content and culture-based English teaching. Okay, thank you, Miss Maria.
Yeah, thank you so much, Muyuni, for the question. So it's interesting to see the perspective of junior high school teacher. I guess it's going to be similar with Pa Shaim. So we can always start with the needs survey. So what do the students need actually? What do they want to do after they are out of the classroom and then finally mastering the English language and culture? For example, there's a case study when I come to one school, and it turns out what they need is to interact in online game because they think English language and culture is something that they need to use to survive in virtual world, and they see virtual world as a global environment for them, and that's why in one of the article I wrote down that virtual world is also something we might have to equip as part of the material in cross-cultural understanding materials. But again, different context, different need, and we can always start from that survey need. You can start. Well, I don't know whether it's going to be an absolute work for everybody, but usually I'll start with questions. Their first language, second language, just as usual, and then after that I'll ask. What is actually the meaning of English language and culture for you? And then how are you going to use it in the future after you're graduating? And also one thing I usually ask, how many times or in what kind of context do they have like some kind of intercultural interactions beyond the classroom? Do they have that? Do they use English for reading books? Do they have intercultural interaction within virtual world or in a real face-to-face interactions, or how is it? I hope I respond to your question directly. Uni, thank you.
Thank you, Miss Uni. Now we'll moving on to another speaker or another wants to ask. You can raise your hand or write your question in the chat box.
Or maybe Bapak Ibu, if you have similar experience or maybe different experience, that would be great to hear as well. To be honest, I can actually see familiar names on the list. Thank you so much, Bapak Ibu, for joining.
May I ask? Oh, sorry.
Yes, Pak Syahid.
Okay, maybe my question is directed to Ibu Noor Rachmawaty. This is about the cultural intelligence. That's an interesting phrase that I get from your presentation. So what is that? Okay. So cultural intelligence is from your presentations dealing with how these students fit in with different sets of cultures around them. So if I bring that into my own perspective as a teacher, and which is, of course, I also experienced studying in the United States, now in a foreign country, and then when you stand in front of the class and then you see your students expecting you to explain certain different things about Indonesia and beyond. So one thing that I have in my mind is about the cultural intelligence. When I try to see the students grow in terms of their cultural intelligence, we need to make sure that we invest their time and the resources from the school or from the university to allow them to learn more about this culture. Because without reading, without interaction, without having experiences from different cultures, that there might not be cultural intelligence. So the question is for Ibu Noor, and I'm a lecturer as well, in what way we could measure our students have grown their cultural intelligence? Because, right now we have AI, gadget, and all those things. So we need to prepare students to be ready to encounter challenges in the future. Thank you, Ibu Noor.
Adap, I'm going to respond directly to Pak Syed. Yeah. Pak Syed, thank you very much for the question. And I agree with you that we need to invest a great deal of, what do you call it there? A great deal of information and knowledge to our students that later on we can see that our students' cultural intelligence is actually growing. Yeah. I think what we can do as a lecturer, I think we can, firstly, we can expose them to the right, I'm going to use a bracket, the right information that they need to read. We know that they can get any information from AI. They can do, they actually can collaborate with other people from different countries while they are playing game. Yeah. So I think there are different ways that the students can do personally to acquire cultural intelligence by themselves. But for lecturers, in our academic setting, I think what we need to do is to provide the information that they should read. I think the way that they can understand is not only by listening to us, the lecturers who have been to different countries, but I think they also need to read the right information in order to get the right concept and ideas of culture itself and how culture can be integrated in their process of learning language. So we can provide different readings, we can provide collaboration between lecturers from different countries. For example, I used to have a class that I invite not a foreigner, but a friend who's from different country to our class so that the students can actually listen to what happened and compare their perspective and understand what actually is what is actually happening in different set of cultural setting, because they usually listen from us, right? And we might be quite subjective while giving our ideas toward our students. Yeah. So for example, in the first time I was in Australia, one of my friends asked me a question about cleanliness related to using toilet paper. So yeah, according to my friend, it is cleaner when you use toilet paper in the toilet rather than using water. Then that kind of things I bring in the classroom so that we can discuss and the students can understand that simple things might matters and invite different kind of ideas. Yeah. Not only from the academic setting, but also from those kind of things. I'm not sure with other friends who have been abroad, perhaps they also experience somewhat, but that was one of my experience when I was in Melbourne. My Australian friend directly asked me about that question, and I was like, what? And also, I remember from Ibu Maria presentation, she talked about when we meet another person, we say hello. And that is actually what happened to me when the first time I joined an exchange program in Canada. I remember that my English teacher always taught me when you ask a question, how are you? And then we have to answer the question, I'm fine, thank you. So all of the phrases I try to practice in a real conversation, but actually that is not what happened. We can always have different answers, not always, hi, how are you? I'm fine, thank you, and you. We can have different answers. We can actually say thank you or fine, yeah. It's not always like the long expression level. Yeah, right.
Thank
Bu
you.
Irma, jawabannya template.
Thank
Thank you, Pak Said.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Said and Ms. Noor Rachmawaty. Now, I think we have another questions from Ms. Sumarni. I think this is directed to Ms. Maria. And the question is like, it's intriguing that the students in your study tend to embrace the identity of being global citizen. Would you kindly share if there's any tension they experience between embracing the international identity and maintaining their home culture? Silakan, Ibu.
Hello, Bu Marni. Nice meeting you here. Yeah, so that's very interesting questions, because when I come up with one of the interview questions, do you see change of yourself before and after learning English? In what I do, when I posted the questions here, most of them they say yes, I can see the change. I'm aware with the change. Just a simple one, even the way I think. So remember, one of the theory, language is related to the way we think. So that is the statement coming out from the participants here. But when I started the question, and when I posted the questions in the US, they come from different background. Some of them, they say no, there is no change at all. I don't want to. But then after they say no, there is no change, the next statement, the next sentence is always been, I don't want to change myself. So when I do the coding about this identity thing, right? What do they think about learning English language and culture? Then I can see they find English language and culture as a media for them to introduce themselves, their identity to the global world. But then they don't see themselves their local identity, right? Their national identity is as something separated from this international identity. So when you embrace the international identity, it doesn't mean that you have to leave the national identity behind, and it's not something that you have to clash or to go against with, but it's just a matter of playing role. So that is the conception I can see from the participant in the US. Because once again, they come from different mother tongue, they come from different area throughout the world. So if I can if I can share to you the demography, like 80%, 70% they come from China, Korea, so Asia basically, and then the rest 20% they come from Saudi Arabia and Qatar, also Ukraine. That's also reflect the result of study, which is more on my national identity is part of the international or global identity, global citizenship, and that's why to be to take part in a global citizenship, I have to master English language and culture, and that is the function. That's what I can share, perhaps, Mulmari. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you, Miss Maria, and thank you for Miss Sumarni for asking the questions. Now I think we have another questions from Miss Desi, and this is for Miss Noor. In what ways can culturally responsive classroom enhance students' engagement in language learning? And how can EFL teachers help students develop their cultural intelligence in the classroom? Silakan, Ibu.
Thank you. Adam, thank you, Bu Desi, for the question. And I think I would like to address the first question. In what ways can culturally responsive classroom enhance student engagement in language learning? I think I'm going to take an example from Ibu Maria's presentation. I think that was the authentic example of how we can create an culturally responsive classroom in our context. Like one of the examples is by expressing thank you in different ways. Yeah. And I think that is the way we can address the student awareness on how we can say, how we can express something in our identity, because I think we also grown up in different cultural contexts in Indonesia. And I believe that students were brought up by their parents differently. And that might relate cultural values in the way the parents raise them. Yeah. In addition to the global cultural values in Indonesia. Yeah. And I think by creating different kinds of activities that can help students to be aware on their own culture and different culture, and that might help the students to have higher cultural awareness. Having higher cultural awareness, this relate to higher cultural intelligence. And when students are given an opportunity to express how they feel, they are going to feel involved. They are going to be willing to negotiate with the condition, and this will create a positive atmosphere for the students to learn the foreign language, because it's not only giving them a space to express their feeling, but they also given a place where they feel safe, in their different kinds of identity. I think that's one of the idea of basic.
Okay, thank you, Miss Noor, and thank you for Miss Desi for the amazing questions. So I would like to ask again if an audience in the room wanted to questions, you can actually write it in the chat box or raise your hand using the emoticon, or just raise your hand like this. Do we have any
I have a question, Adam. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Miss
Yeah.
Carmila.
But first of all, I'm so sorry I won't be able on cam because I'm in the middle of faculty meeting, but I wouldn't want to miss this opportunity. And as I was expecting, I learned a lot from both presenters today. Thank you so much, Bu Maria and also Bu Noor. I just actually want to know both of the presenters, Bu Maria and Bu Noor's opinion, probably, or prediction, or probably your take on the future of cross-cultural understanding courses. Because as you know, nowadays with the fast-growing development of artificial intelligence and also social media, where like TikTok or Reels, where students can get any information about cultural interaction, or even they have their own interaction with real people from different background, like for example from Ome TV, they can even have an exposure to real people at the real time, from different background or from different culture. So yeah, I just want to know about both of your opinion about the future of cross-cultural understanding courses. Thank you.
Maria, go first or I'll go first?
Silakan Bu,
Okay.
saya tuan rumah dulu.
Baik, Bu Maria, terima kasih. Oke, Bu Carmila, I think we still need to have our cross-cultural understanding course, or perhaps in different department they might name it differently. But I think that courses is very important to help our students to be more focused on what they actually need to understand about culture itself. They might get the opportunities to interact with people from different culture, and they can read anything about culture or being the global citizen by doing this and that. but still, I think a course help them to help to direct them to get the idea of what should they learn, and then how can they apply this, and how can they give benefit to their society in the end by understanding the process of learning culture itself. Yeah, so I think our cross-cultural understanding or multicultural course is still necessary to have in our department, apart from all the advance of technology that we have nowadays. Thank you.
Yeah. Again, the future takes that's always been related to technology, AI, and digital world. That's what I'm going to highlight. And as part of the findings and suggestion in my dissertation, I put down that with of course with my supervisor, both of us, three of us, we found out students in Jakarta, they want to survive in virtual world, and all this time we've been setting up the examples, materials, and then exposures to our students in a face-to-face world always. But then after the pandemic, of course, everything changed, and with the mobile game application that has been around, and our students engage more with that more than engaging in the face-to-face setting. Of course, we might have to give more exposure on how do they have to interact in a virtual world. And even if we want to conduct cross-cultural understanding classroom, I believe most of us, we are ChatGPT user, and we are prompter. And even as a prompter, we need cross-cultural understanding with the AI. Like when we expect the response will be A or B, we need to arrange the prompt as effective as possible, as efficient as possible. And believe it or not, related to chatbot, there's been very popular study nowadays related to personality architecture for the chatbot. So the chatbot can have cross-cultural understanding. Bottom line, the principles of knowing ourselves, which is intercultural communicative competence, right? Knowing ourselves, and then knowing others, and then comparing what we have and what they have, and then trying to put our shoes in their experience to finally can engage in such an intercultural communication, in an effective intercultural communication. That kind of principles is applicable for us in relation with AI, for us in relation with chatbot, for us in relation with virtual world, as always. But maybe what we need to do, we need to integrate this kind of setting within our teaching materials and exposure. So yes, we are a language department, but language in related to intercultural communicative competence right now is always been connected to technology use and virtual world. Maybe that's what I can say.
Okay, thank you so much, Ibu Maria and Ibu Noor. I agree that
Sama-sama,
we
Bu.
need to highlight on the materials and be careful with that. But also, I think also the assessment, we need to revisit the assessment for that courses.
Agree.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
sama-sama, Bu.
Okay, thank you for Miss Carmila and the amazing answer from Miss Maria and Miss Noor Rachmawaty. And I think we have one last questions from Miss Astrid. Okay, So she said that I just wanted to share my thoughts on how I think there are similarities between Miss Noor and Miss Maria's research because in the US, due to its racialized culture ergo, racialized English in which academic English is closely tied to white English, culturally responsive and sustaining pedagogies are something that have been gaining attention in the country's educational system. I'm wondering if Miss Maria and Miss Noor perhaps consider this perspective too, because the US, similar to Australia, is a settler colonial country, so racial hierarchies resulted in linguistic/English hierarchies should probably be taken into consideration as well. Silakan, Ibu.
Okay, maybe I can share first. That is one point. But of course, we also have to consider different context, different perspective. Because again, the education belongs to different states and different community. Of course, with different population in terms of teachers and also students. But based on my experience, it sounds so essentialism, right? What you share, Bu Astri, is really essentialist. But based on what I've found within the institution I'm working with, they do have the sense of essentialism. So hierarchy is there, essentialism and also structuralism. So hierarchy is there, accent, and once in a while, the teacher sometimes correct the accent and choice of words. But also once in a while, and I can say quite often, the exposure of real world, which is main characteristic of postmodern, is also there. So students are free to go to museum, to interact with artists, because within the university we have art center and we also have a cultural center. Then once a week there always been some kind of outing, whether it's to the art center or watching a concert and then interacting with the artist, or even to a lake just to interact with people around the lake, the community outreach, for example, which finally helped them to discover what is English language and culture within that region. So the activities let them interpret, to see the deeper perspective of or the deeper meaning of English language and culture for them. And in terms of assessment, which is a good thing that Bu Carmila mentioned, in terms of assessment, there are two sides of assessment. The one which is scored with ABC or with scale 9 to 100, and the one which is scored based on their reflective experience. So the grade is pass or fail. And of course, the category of fail is not because their work is bad, but simply because they just don't pass the work. I mean, they don't do the work, as simple as that. So these two sides of assessment complementing one another. I think that's for me, Bu Astri. And I give it back to Bu Noor.
Thank you. I think I would like to just add a little bit to what has been mentioned by Bu Maria. When we are talking about US culture, I think the one who should be the filter here is the teacher. And that's why English teacher should have or should possess the cultural intelligence in order to maintain the classroom well, and to what you call it in and also not only to maintain the class well, but also to give the perspective toward culture and what the students need to understand. Yeah. Even though the students might have different perspective, but I think we as a teacher need to provide adequate exposure for the students to understand that there are differences between culture, but still we need to respect the differences. And I think through better understanding toward the differences, we can help the students to understand about the culture itself and how we put the concept in our educational system. I'm giving back to Adam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for everyone and participants and the audience. I think due to our limited time, we'll have to close the Q&A session. Thank you for all of your participations, questions, and enthusiasm. We truly appreciate your time and presence in the session. We would like to thank all the speakers and participants again for your valuable time and insights about discussing the culture teaching paradigms in Indonesia and the United States, and the role of the cultural intelligence and learning strategies in enhancing AFL learners' English proficiency. Once again, I am Ademima Sakti from Mulawarman University. Hope today's session has been meaningful and enriching for everyone. I'm going to wrapping up this session. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at another event. Have a great day, stay well, and stay inspired. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu.
Lola.
Terima kasih Bu Lola, Bu Nur,
Terima kasih
Bu
Bu
Yuni.
Madi.
Terima kasih.
Thank you so much, Miss.
Thank you, Aminef and Miss Mita.
Ya, thank you Miss Mita.
Miss Vita, makasih banyak. Terima kasih udah mengundang.
Adam, terima kasih. Izin.
Terima kasih Bu Maria.
Thank you Adam. Thank you Bu Karmila.